Hey guys, okay, so I want to do a bit of review of chapter 27, which covers special iOS adjectives, the intensive pronoun ipse, and the demonstrative idem. So, your special iOS adjectives are also known as unas nauta words. Alright, there are 9 of them. They follow first and second declension, and they have an irregular genitive singular and dative singular. And this pattern of irregularity is just like ile, ila, ilud, which we're going to review today. And you can remember these adjectives by the acronym unus nauta. So let's look at unus nauta. What are the words? We write the word out as an acrostic, and the U becomes unus aum, which means one. And we have nullus aum, not any or none. Ullus aum, any. Solus aum, alone or only. Nuter, nutra, nutrum, which means neither. Alias aud, which means another or other. Uter, utra, utrum, which is either. Totus aum, whole or entire. And alter, altera, alterum, the other, when talking about two distinct objects or people. Alright, now it declines just like ile, ila, ilud. So let's look at ile, ila, ilud for a moment. Our masculine is ile, ilius, ili, ilum, ilo, ili, ilorum, ilis, ilos, ilis. Now if that bit at the end sounded a bit familiar, that's because it is. It followed second declension masculine endings. The only difference are the genitive and dative singular. They are irregular. Likewise, your feminine is going to decline very, very similar. It's following first declension feminine endings, though. Look at the blue. Ilam, ila, ilai, ilarum, ilis, ilas, ilis. It just has an irregular genitive and dative singular. And likewise, your neuter is going to follow second declension neuter endings and going to have an irregular genitive and dative singular. Now I highlighted the accusative, ilud, because it's following the neuter rule, which a lot of students forget. The neuter rule states that the nominative, accusative, and vocative for a neuter word are identical. So if it's illud up in the nominative, it's going to be illud down in the accusative as well. Okay, moving on, your unus nauta takeaway. There's 9 of them, and they have irregular genitive and dative singulars. They follow the same patterns ile, ila, ilud, and you can remember them with the acronym unus nauta. And one quick final note, the word alius, which is the final A in nauta, doesn't really, it does have kind of a genitive, I guess, it'd be alius, but the Romans tended to use alter's genitive more often, alterius. Moving on, we've got ipse, ipsa, ipsum, our intensive pronoun. It translates as himself, herself, or itself. It declines just like ile, ila, ilud. So it's going to have second declension endings in the masculine, except for your genitive and dative singular. And your feminine form is going to follow first declension, except for the irregular genitive and dative singular. And your neuter is going to follow second declension neuter endings, except for the genitive and dative singular. All right, now, ipse, ipsa, ipsum is an intensive word only. That means it will never be used to say he bathed himself or he, let's use this one. This is a good example. If we were to say he killed himself, that is only a reflexive sentence. That means that he is the one doing the killing to himself. Whereas a intensive, I can remove the word himself and it will keep the meaning. If I did that with he killed himself and I removed the word himself, it would say he killed, and you would ask, who? I've changed the meaning or the expectation of the sentence. And we'll look at an example in a moment that hopefully will clarify that more. Okay. Again, it's an intensive word only. It cannot be used reflexively. It follows the same pattern as ile, ila, ilud. And here are some examples of what I was talking about before. If the sentence has the same sense when I remove the self word, then it's intensive. So for example, I myself praised him. If I remove the word myself and just say I praise him, is it the same sentence? Yes, it means the same thing. He himself praises me. If I remove himself, the sentence is still the same. Notice my example a moment ago. He killed. If I take out the word himself, he killed himself, and just say he killed, the sentence no longer remains the same. So that's an example of a reflexive. If the sentence does stay the same, it's intensive. Moving on to idem, eadem, idem, which means the same. That's a demonstrative. It's formed by taking the demonstrative isea id, which means he, she, or it, and attaching the suffix dem. It always translates as the same. And it has the same irregular ius, genitive, and I dative, just like all the other words we've looked at this PowerPoint. Now, one little note, and you want to fix this in your head. The letter M in the accusative singulars and genitive plurals of this word are going to change to N. So before we look at that in more detail, I want to look at isea id as a refresher. How do we decline this word? So right, isea id, the masculine form is going to do the same exact thing that ille, illa, illud did, meaning it has second declension masculine endings, but it has the irregular genitive and dative singular. Likewise, your feminine is going to follow first declension endings and have an irregular genitive and dative singular. And your neuter is going to follow second declension neuter, but it's going to have an irregular genitive and dative singular. And I also highlighted that accusative singular id. Why? That's right, because it follows the neuter rule. Since it's a neuter word, the accusative must match the nominative. They must be the same. Now let's look at idem, eadem, and idem. It's going to decline just like this. Notice the masculine, you have isea id with the suffix dem. The same thing for the feminine and the same thing for the neuter. It's isea id with the suffix dem, which I highlighted in purple. And then I highlighted the N in the accusative and genitive plurals because those should be M, but they changed. And there's a whole linguistic reason, but we don't have time to get into it. It's a little too complicated to really teach at an intro level Latin. All right. Now, some examples of idem, eadem, and idem. Eos dem mito, I am sending the same men. De eadem ratione cogitavamos, we were thinking about the same plan. Viri eistem deabos dona davant, the men were giving gifts to the same goddesses. And finally, Dido et Lavinia eundem virum amavit, Dido and Lavinia loved the same man. All right, hopefully that was a good refresher. If you have any questions, please email me.